What's up, everybody? Welcome to Puzzle Huddle with Experts. I have another fantastic guest, Dr. Verna Orr. I found out or confirmed for myself, Dr. Orr has two doctoral degrees. So she's a high achieving intellectual, very capable. Her cerebral level is at it's higher, it's as high as it can get. So I'm excited to have her share some of her academic insight and her professional insight. So welcome, Dr. Orr. I'm glad to have you today.
Thank you, sir, for having me, Matthew.
All right, and for the foundations, just so we can all catch up to where we can just imagine ourselves where you are professionally. What things are you an expert on, and where do you have your top professional insight?
Yep. So first, I want to say thank you for this opportunity. I have been watching you for a while now, and I'm so excited for your future. I'm very proud of you. I remember you as a freshman at Howard, and I'm just so just proud of you. I look at your family and just a beautiful example of Black love. So congratulations to you. With regard to my expertise, or what I would talk about regarding my scholarly pursuits. So I look at assessment, and you'll hear the word assessment and accreditation be used interchangeably, but they're two very different things. Assessment is a tool for accreditation. Assessment specifically is collecting information, reviewing the information, and using that information to make decisions. And so with regard to my dissertation work at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, I specifically looked at assessment practices at HBCUs. And so I looked at what people are able to do because of their HBCU experience. Not necessarily what the institution says, but actual evidence of what people are doing, and that is attributed to their HBCU teaching and learning experience. So I would say my professional background, my expertise is in assessment.
All right, and from our pre-conversation with you having two doctoral degrees, I want to kind of walk through both of them to some degree. Your first doctoral degree, and that was maybe the EDD.
Yes.
What was it that you studied in relationship to your dissertation to earn that specific degree?
So that's a great question, and a lot of people have that question, so I'll try to address it quickly. The program at Howard was a pretty new program. I think I was in the fourth cohort. It was the EAGLE program. So the EAGLE program was designed to produce superintendents, school and district leaders, and which is what I thought I wanted to do once I graduated from undergraduate. I thought I wanted to go back home and be superintendent. But what happened was during my internship, which all of us had to do, I chose to intern with a woman who was an African-American woman who was a VP at a Research One institution. I saw her walking on campus one day, and I knew she was making moves. I knew she was in charge, and I said, I have to meet this woman. And so I went to her office the next day, no appointment. She quickly told me, you need an appointment. And, I got myself together and scheduled the appointment, and I talked to her regarding my goals. And, we kind of talked through that or what have you. And she said, well, I would love to have you, this is higher ed. Clearly you're studying K-12. And I told her that I really was interested in, all aspects of education. And so she allowed me an opportunity to work for her during the summer in her office. And I will tell you, at that time, the president of that institution had abruptly resigned, or not resigned, but announced that he would be stepping down. And so my responsibility shifted very quickly. I had to learn about presidential transitions. Like, who knew that was even a thing? That's an actual field of study. And what I kept finding out over and over again during the research is that college presidents, and that was back in 2010, college presidents, and it's still true today, are white, male, married men, none of which I am. And so that struck my senses, like, I'm none of these people. And if I wanted to be a college president, does this mean I can't be? And so that is when my professional career goals shifted from K-12 to higher education. It's that simple.
Wow. And so then for as you might have pivoted academically, and then the writing component of the degree, what was the actual topic of the dissertation that, based on that experience, that you focused on?
And so, yes, so remember, I was in a very early cohort. So most of my peers were writing about the superintendency, African-American women path to the superintendency,
Yeah.
Black people's path to the superintendency, or leadership at the district level.
Yeah.
I chose to look at African-American women who were college presidents. So I looked at women who were presidents at predominantly white institutions, or PWIs. I looked at college presidents who were Black women presidents who were president at HBCUs, community colleges. I found a couple of online institutions, and also theological and same-sex institutions. And I found over and over again that the leadership trajectory is not the same. Leadership skills can be transferable. So some of them didn't have the traditional route to the presidency, where you start out as a faculty member or assistant, associate, full professor, then you're department chair, then associate dean, then a dean, and then you work your way up. I did not find that to be true with the women who I interviewed. They were all very, very unique, all brilliant Black women.
Yeah.
And then the range of the people that I interviewed 16 of them. The oldest
you talked to them like, okay.
I talked to 16. Now this is back in 2009. So we didn't have Zoom and all that stuff. I actually drove up down. I flew down to Florida and I drove up the East Coast, and I interviewed two in North Carolina, one in Pennsylvania. Clearly you can't tell who you interviewed, but because of, you just have to keep that anonymous. But the range of people that I interviewed with regard to their age was 74, and the youngest was 41. And that woman actually was announced as president when she was 38 years old. So you would see that the range of responsibilities and the range of opportunities for a 38-year-old versus someone whose first presidency was a 65, their opportunities look very, very different.
Yeah, if I had to guess now, I didn't do the research that you did, but in my head, they're probably lawyer types. They have JDs, and then maybe there's this faculty path to the top where, if you just hit those levels in the staircase, eventually you get a position where you could be considered. What else is in the mix? And I'm sure there's some medical doctors in that population as well.
Yep. So a few of them came from the business world. Okay. I would say two specifically came from the business world. Two of them came from K-12. So they were superintendents, the both of them. There were 3 JDs, if I remember correctly. This is a couple years ago, 3 JDs, 2 EDDs, where they, again, transitioned from public schools to higher education. That's the best I can remember at this time. But going back to my first point, they had all reached a high level where they were. And that goes to the fact, one of the themes that came out is the idea that leadership skills are transferable. That doesn't necessarily mean that we have to be on a certain path to the presidency. But if you check off certain points and you get certain leadership development and opportunities and experiences, it will set you at a place, a good position to, go out there and measure with the best of them.
Yeah, because once you get there, you got to do the fundraising piece. You have to be a leader for the faculty.
That's right.
You got to know finance and operations.
All of that.
Then the PR and the news, and there's just so many potentially expert areas where you can hire, fully trained, qualified professionals to run that thing. But the president kind of has to embody all of these things.
Absolutely. And that's a great point. The woman who I have the absolute pleasure of supporting as our chief of staff currently is a former attorney as well. She is amazing. She is extraordinary in every way. She knows all of those pieces, the finance piece, business and finance, facilities, student affairs. But she also, what I really, really, really respect about her leadership acumen is the idea that she hires smart people in those expert areas, right? So she hired me as the assessment person because we needed specific things. There were certain things that we had to tackle. So she brought me on. She hired a young lady from Miami, fundraiser, really, really talented young lady who had been at a predominantly white institution. She's here with us as well. And so it is good to have these tools in your toolbox, right, or your toolkit, but it's also good to hire people at the highest level in those particular areas. And that's what my president has done. I would be remiss if I do not mention her. Her name is Dr. Rosalind Clark Artist. And again, I am grateful every day to be under her tutelage and to lead and learn from her, for sure.
Yeah, those positions are tough because if the paint is chipping on the walls, or if
That's
the
right.
toilets don't flush, or if your adjunct faculty is frustrated with their pay, it's all rushes to blame the president.
Absolutely.
So it's a hard job. And thank goodness you did the research. This should be an Essence magazine article. I don't know where this research is tucked away. Put it on a plate for wide consumption. Hopefully you're able to continue to find ways to do that so that there's wide awareness of your insights. All right.
Yeah.
Doctoral degree number 2, which is just the craziest thing to say. Wow.
Yeah, I'm a crazy lady. Yeah, I am.
You know other people with 2 doctoral degrees, because
I do. My president actually has 2 doctoral degrees.
Okay, because Black women that things that are unusual for some populations. It's kind of normal over here. It's not too acceptable.
I wouldn't put it in a normal bucket, but I know a few people with 2 doctoral degrees. Yep.
Okay. Well, now tell me about assessment, learning assessment, and transferable skills, and what you studied for your second doctoral degree.
Yep. So the second doctoral degree again was obtained at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, where I was under the Dr. James Anderson, who basically wrote the book on Black education. If you have not read his book, I would highly recommend it. It's called The Education of Blacks in the South, 1865 to 1930. And he kind of gives you a history lesson with regard to the founding of HBCUs and Black education and what that looked like in comparison to today. And so that's Dr. James Anderson, but my dissertation director, Dr. Natasha Jankowski, is an assessment guru. She is, if you Google assessment at this moment scholar, she would be the top one. So I had a very unique experience with working with someone specifically on higher education of Blacks and then assessment. And so what I did was I married the two. Assessment, I will say, though it is my expert field and my mentor would probably say, don't say this, but assessment is not my first love. Okay. HBCUs are. And so I was able to marry what I was doing with the thing that I love. And actually now I have a greater respect for assessment because it's absolutely necessary to ensure that we not just say these things, but we walk the walk. And so my dissertation was on assessment accountability at HBCUs. So I looked at specific HBCUs. I looked at Morehouse School of Medicine and the things that they do. One of the things that you will find, especially at a professional or medical school, is that they want students to be ready for them. Like, we're the standard, you need to get here. Yeah. What I appreciated about Morehouse School of Medicine, that all of their applicants have to take the Myers-Briggs, is an inventory of like a psychological. So what they do is they group them based on how they see them to be most successful at Morehouse School of Medicine. And so we kind of flip the script. We don't need you to get ready for us. We need to get ready for you and make sure that you are successful. So I just think that's a beautiful thing. It's much more eloquently stated in my dissertation than what I just did. But HBCUs have, again, I mean, anybody who has studied HBCUs knows that we have been open to all. We have never been discriminatory. We basically have provided opportunities where for our people and all people where opportunities were not available at other institutions. We have done that really well, though we've been severely underfunded, under resources for years. We continue to produce high level people in this society. We are pretty much responsible for the Black middle class in this country. And so like you said before we started recording, I am a huge HBCU fan. I chose HBCUs because HBCUs chose me. And I think if you went to an HBCU, you understand what I mean when I say that. We had a very, very unique experience as Howard University students that I don't know if I truly appreciated being an undergraduate. But at this moment in my life, I can absolutely say attending an HBCU, specifically Howard University, was probably the best decision of my life. And so I will work every day to ensure that, you know, we kind of get not just the justice that we're due, but we offer opportunities for students who wouldn't have these experiences. And so that is why I chose to look at assessment at HBCU. So it might be a model for other institutions to follow. Now, you can't do it the same way because there is people like to call it HBCU sauce. I like to call it magical dust, because you think about, I'm actually working on a paper called Magical Dust, which is most of HBCUs have historic buildings on their campuses.
Oh yeah,
and you think about the stories that could come out of those buildings. Some of them are dilapidated. Some of them are in use, but you'll find dust on the ground, right? And what happens when you agitate dust or when you walk through it? The dust rises. And so those lessons from that dust, even though people like to kind of dismiss it and say, oh, that's trash, like those are lessons that people have for us if we listen, so that is, I think my life's calling.
Yeah. Now, your undergrad degree is in music education.
It is.
So what is the through line that connects that to any of this work? Or is that something that you were interested in and passionate about at a time, but life kind of took some turns and you've moved away from that as a...
Yep. So I have been a musician for a very, very long time. I think I was in kindergarten when my parents bought me my first recorder.
Okay.
And I would toot that thing, and I know I would tooting down their nerves. But so I've always been a musician, and then as I got older in the performing arts, specifically musical theater. And so it was just a natural progression to go to study music. I don't want this to sound, so I was very good. I don't think it was a God-given talent, I believe. And so went to Howard, studied music, and went on, graduated, and became a music teacher. Well, my principal at the time, Mr. Joe Dixon, knew that I had leadership aspirations. And the music teacher, I don't teach all day. So he would give me opportunities to lead. He would send me into a class where a teacher needed a break. So that was giving me opportunities to see students in a different way, because everybody wants to come to the music class, but nobody wants to do science or math or English. So it gave me an opportunity to a different leadership experience at my school. And so again, he gave me opportunities to lead. I would sit in on individualized education plan, or IEP plan meetings. Mm-hmm. I knew nothing about that. So went back and got my master's. He said, or you say you want to, develop. So I suggest you go get a master's. I went back and got a master's, this time in administration, because again, I thought I was going to go back home to be a superintendent. So my master's is in educational administration and policy. So looking at, what the law say about, I think during that time it was No Child Left Behind. Like, what does that mean? Because the kids that I was serving, they were being left behind, in my opinion. And so it was just more curiosity. So music teacher, transition to leader on campus, transition to a master's, that transition to a doctorate in educational administration and policy. So instead of looking at just the school level, I was looking at the district level. And then, so transitioning from that to higher ed. Now I will tell you, when I went into the internship that I mentioned earlier, I thought I knew what I was doing. I thought I knew everything, because I was a hothead and I was a leader at a young age. All of those dynamics that you think you know everything. Mm-hmm. I will tell you that moving from K-12 or transitioning from K-12 to higher ed, I was a fish out of water. It is a very different dynamic, K-12 versus higher education, for sure.
Tell me this, when I didn't realize that you were very skilled on the instrument. When I met you, yes, you were an auxiliary captain yes, in the Showtime Marching Band at Howard.
That's right.
I don't know how many auxiliary members have a strong instrumental skill set. I don't know.
I don't know that either, but yes, I was a music major and I was actually first chair. I was like, I was really good. And then I went to, or first clarinet, excuse me. And then I went to the E flat clarinet, and then I was playing the bass clarinet. I was in the marching band, marching with my flag, and during the day doing the job that paid me, or as a musician.
How did you decide to pursue a role in auxiliary? And shout out to all my dancers and flag twirlers.
Yes.
Love
and flashy forever.
All of that. Like, I love it. Like, I really love it. But how did you end up in auxiliary when you have such a strong instrumental skill set?
Listen, so when my parents dropped me off at Howard, my grandmother came with us. I'm named after her. God bless her. And we were walking around. My first year was the first year they had the pinning ceremony. So it was kind of, it wasn't as festive as it is, it was a idea then. And
Yeah.
so we were walking around and came across the Fine Arts Building, which is now the Chadwick Boseman Fine Arts Building. And we walked by and the flags were actually having tryouts. Or they were, excuse me, they were doing practice. And we, we just kind of walked by, and my grandma said, I bet Verna's going to do that. She said, I bet Verna's going to take that over, something like that. Now, I had never in my life picked up a flag at all. But she kind of struck something in me. And that following week, there were tryouts, because, freshmen come and then there are tryouts. There's an auxiliary showcase, and then you try out. And so I tried out. I didn't make it. My captain still teases me about that. I didn't make it.
Well, you wound up being a captain, so you caught up.
Yes, yes. Yeah, they called me back after a girl quit.
Oh, wow.
I like everything else. It was if I do something, I wanted to be 100%. And I learned very, very quickly. And I had some really, really good big sisters. We are very close to this day.
Yeah.
And I think too, after choosing Howard, flashy changed my life. With just the relationships. Again, like I told you before, we're the adults now. So we have been to weddings, funerals, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We're making decisions for our parents, and the lessons that we learned way back then as freshmen in the marching band hold true to this day. And so I'm forever grateful for my flashy family, forever.
All right, and your kind of love and tribute to HBCUs. Help me just kind of get a summary of why is it, how and why did you fall in love with HBCUs?
Well, I will restate what I said earlier. Howard chose me. I come from a family, so my dad's side, the ones who did go to college went to HBCUs, most of which were at Edward Waters, which is a small HBCU in Jacksonville, Florida. I had a auntie who went to Bethune-Cookman, and then some of my friends went to mostly FAMU, University of Florida. And I saw the difference with regard to my friends who went to state schools or larger schools. When they came back home, the things they were talking about, the things they cared about, it was drastically different from the people who were going to HBCUs. And so, it struck my interest years and years ago. And I think being engulfed in the culture at Howard as a student, and then as a staff member in the president's office, you just get to see the range of Black brilliance. You get to see the range of, Black finances. I don't know a better word at this moment. You see people who are third and fourth generation Howard people got more money than I ever knew that Black people had. And then you have people who were there simply because their grandmothers prayed for them and somebody put money, you know what I mean? So you get to see the range of what you can be and do. And it was just very, it was exciting for me to know that I was a place where I belonged, and I knew that I would be successful with whatever I chose to do.
Yeah, based on your research and your current professional position, what are some of the universal challenges associated with HBCUs administration? Is it enrollment? Is it infrastructure? What are some of the common challenges that a lot of them are facing?
That's a great question. Now I have to be very careful with how I answer. I will answer from a scholarly place. Because my background is in assessment, I have found that the majority of HBCUs are saturated in the South.
Yeah.
And the Southern Regional Accreditor is SAC-COC. And that means that, you can have a group of peers to kind of, for lack of better words, judge your course offerings, judge the overall experience at your institution. One of the things that I find to be a challenge in this moment is the idea that the people who are peers are not really our peers. They don't necessarily understand what we do on HBCU campuses. They don't understand the nuances that have to be considered when you are making decisions for people's lives. And so when you come up for accreditation, which we all have to, it's not just an HBCU thing. Everybody has to be accredited if you are trying to pull down these federal funds that our students so desperately need. You have groups of people, or they're called like a accreditation team, but basically they're supposed to be peers. The majority of them are not peers. They're from majority institutions, very well resourced institutions, don't necessarily have an enrollment issue. Their value prop is there. You know, you just say an institution name and they get like a check just because of where they are or who they are. And so I think the challenge at this moment is the idea that we need more peers to be a part of the peer review process, people who actually, now we're not trying to not check our boxes. We want to make sure that we are compliant as well, but we also need people to understand what we do on our campuses. And just because we're doing something that doesn't necessarily mean or look the same on your campus, that doesn't mean it's not happening on our campuses. It's just different.
Yeah, okay. But tell me, I want to change gears just a little bit because I'm raising 3 young children at home.
Yes.
So for you to have made all of this professional progress and earned 2 doctoral degrees, what kind of child were you? Were you just like always a scholarly kid?
Yes, but I was super cool.
Yeah, the 2 are not different to me.
Yes. I think I attribute my my brain clearly to my parents. And I also had some really good people around me. I went to school at my church from, I guess, age 2 to about 6. Okay. And they say I was reading when I was 3. I don't remember, not reading novels, but I knew sight words at 3. So I've always been heavily involved with the church. Actually, my mom, when she was pregnant with me, got baptized at the church we still attend. So I've been at the same church. So okay. I would say that rearing really attribute to who I am today. As far as what kind of kid I was always very, very curious. Sometimes I didn't know when to shut up, which caused some issues for me. Yeah. Oh, yeah. As a young person, I was very curious. And I will also say that I'm a middle child. I have an older sister and a younger brother. And I did not appreciate when I was younger, people like, she's such a middle child. But as an adult, I can totally see that. I don't know if you've ever done any research on birth order, but I am truly a middle child. I was never a problem. I really liked school. Okay. And I think it was because I had some really, really good teachers. I had really fine teachers. I'll shout a few of them out. Ms. Debbie Rouse, who was at Douglas Anderson School of the Arts, Janet Digan, who was also at the School of the Arts, and actually Ironetta Rayburn, who is now a superintendent in Detroit. So I had really good Black women around me. I was a predominantly white school, my high school, that is, it was performing arts, and my teachers will always say, you know, you're a big fish in this little pond. You need to do something. You need to, you know, take calculated risks, be different, be innovative. I always had people in my mind saying that, but I will also say, I am probably the epitome of daddy's girl. He's my favorite person. And he was always like, you're the best. Not like, I don't know if I was, but I believed him. So I walked in that. And so, I mean, to answer your question, I was very inquisitive. I talked a lot, went to church, loved school. And, you know, I just tried to be problem-free for my parents. I wanted to be an example for my brother and my sister and my nieces and cousins and all that stuff. So, but as an adult, I will say, hindsight is, you know, clearly 2020. And I did not have as much fun. I thought I was, but I'm having a whole bunch of fun now. And so I would encourage you as a parent to try to help your children understand it's good to be smart. It's good to be, you know, on a path or whatever, but also make time for fun. You know, that's important.
What were some of your favorite things that you did with your father?
He, to this day, he drives the church van. That's his jam. My daddy gonna be at that church and he's gonna drive that van. He's gonna go pick up Sister Carter and everybody else. You know, just the talks, coming, going to pick people up. I saw him sometimes. There was a lady who was in a wheelchair. He would pick her up, put her on the van. I'm like, Daddy, why are you doing? And I'm like, you know, this is what he has chosen for his life. We would also ride to church together Sunday evenings. He's a leader in the church. He counted the money, and you know, he was just always in my corner. You know what I mean? I mean, clearly my mom like you talking about your wife, my mom made things happen at home.
Yeah.
So she was the one who helped me fill out the application to go to Douglas Anderson School of the Arts. So they were both very, very instrumental in my ring or what have you. But I will also again say my dad is probably my favorite person. My parents are my favorite people.
Yeah. Two more things I want to get out of you. And I'm asking
Sure.
this question a special way because I'm hoping it results in a story. But from your Howard University experience, what was some of your favorite experiences there, or just a memorable experience? That should be answered with that one time when XYZ happened. Do you have there was that time when this thing happened and that was a memorable experience?
Yeah, so I have two, and I'll be quick. The first is, again, I did not appreciate the experience when I was there, but as captain and as as a leader, during homecoming, everybody's trying to come to homecoming, and with the marching band, you in band practice.
Yeah, you're busy.
Yeah, you're busy. Well, when I was captain my first year, one of my young ladies thought that she was going to go to a homecoming event during band practice, and
you don't get to go.
You don't get to go, but she went. She not only attended, she actually walked past our practice to go to
going to the fashion show.
She would die if she knew I was telling the story. So I had to make a decision, right? And I went to Mr. Newsom, our former band director. I said, "This is what happened," or what have you. And he said, "Well, or is your decision if you want her to perform or not?" But in that moment, I also knew that her mom came up to see her perform. Her little sisters were there, and I could have said no. And I had to make a calculated decision to make it right for everybody. And I allowed her to perform. But in that moment, I think I grew up in that moment because I realized it was more than just about what I said as the leader. Just because it's a tradition doesn't necessarily mean that, like, where are the rules? You know what I mean? Yeah. We were just kind of perpetuating these rules that had been passed down to us. And so I made some people upset, people who came before me, and some people who were on the team who actually wanted to go to the fashion show too. But also I put my foot down and said, "This is what's happening. And if you like it, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine too, but we're going to move forward." And so I mentioned that because it was a moment, I remember it was a pivotal moment for me. I'm like, I'm making decisions. You know what I mean?
It's a good story. I didn't realize these stories are going to be this good.
Can you believe she walked past, Matthew? She walked past my practice. And you remember back then, I ruled that fine arts. Like, that was mine.
And so we standing at attention, hot, tired. And
she
here you go
with her fashion show outfit. Right? That's what, yep.
I love this.
And then as a staff member, what I really loved about Howard, I mean, it's just, Howard is the gift that keeps on giving, right?
Yeah, big time.
As a staff member, I had to sometimes attend chapel service or what have you. And the prayer that Dean Richardson always prays about, I don't want to misquote it, but he says, "So I said to the man who stood at the gate of the year, 'Give me a light.' And then he says, he replied, 'Go out into the wild and go out into the world and put your hand in the hand of God, who shall be better for you and safer than a known way, better than light and safer than a known way.'" And he said it just so I can hear and I can feel the love coming out of that. And it's the same poem. Put your hand in the hand of God and he will be better for you than light and safer than a known way. So I'll just keep that there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a good one too. But it's because different things get you through. And that's sometimes Dean Richardson got some taglines that. Yeah. He's been such a pillar of the community. He's been there long enough that he's just a constant, positive, like, presence and consistency.
And can you reflect on that? Like, safer than a known way.
Yeah, that's safe now.
That is, yeah. That's it.
All right. So before I start shouting and crying and running around this little warehouse. The last thing if you had an opportunity to give a TED talk, so an 8 to 12 minute expert talk, going to be in front of 10,000 people in a room in a video that's going to go viral and to get 1 million views. What would you give a TED talk? What would a TED talk from you be about?
For two, I'll say one though. I would highlight Black girlhood.
Ooh, and the
lessons that we learn as Black girls are kind of pushed down. It wasn't until I got to the University of Illinois that I really kind of really embraced all of my Blackness. And it's so crazy because I was at Howard, but you have to, at an institution like that, Illinois that is, be on guard all the time. And I remember I went to a young lady's dissertation defense on Black girlhood and what that means. And she started her dissertation with a song to her grandmother. And she's, you know, my grandma prayed for me, had me on her mind. And it was at that moment that I knew that scholarship could be beautiful and scholarly. You know, you can talk about those lessons that you learned with your grandma. You sitting between your grandma's leg, getting your hair braided, the things that she was saying. Your grandma knew what she was talking about, but it doesn't show up in the scholarly world like they say it should. So I would highlight girlhood, the things that we learn in girlhood that sustain us as we maneuver this wide world. So I would highlight girlhood, the lessons of Black girlhood.
Oh, we need that talk bad. I don't know how to put it through to the people, but Lord, one day somehow we're going to get that talk recorded.
Yep.
All right. Before I start getting any more emotionally upset, I don't know if this is what you plan to do to me at the end. I want to say thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely.
And to our audience, please like this video, subscribe to our channel.
Thank
Dr.
you very
Verna Orr, double doctoral degree. So thank you so much for your time today.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for having me. And may I leave you with my favorite Bible verse?
Oh, amen. Let's get it.
Yeah, well, it's my favorite at this moment. And it is, so it says, for I know the plans I have for you. Plans, well, declares the Lord, he said, plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope in the future. And I hope that whoever looks at this video clearly like it, but also get something out of it. You are enough. Your Blackness is everything that you need to be successful in this world. Do not allow people to dumb you down, because for real, we are the salt of the earth. We are the chosen ones. And I believe that we should walk in that. Thank you, Matthew, for this opportunity.
All right. Thank you for
Good luck
that. I love that ministry moment.
Yes,
All
sir.
right. Signing off. Bye, everybody.
Bye.